questions. I think that many school officials and politicians and parents need to know about Plyler because it is the law of the land. For 30 years now, we've been operating under a program where the Supreme Court has said that states must admit and cannot charge parents whose children are undocumented for attending public schools. Moreover, in all of those schools, these children are subject to truancy laws and are required to be in school. The fact that this case has lasted 30 years has not meant, however, that it's sacrosanct, because there have been efforts to repeal Plyler by a case called Lulac v. Wilson in California in the 1990s that MALDEF and others struck down. And recently in Alabama, just this last week, the state decided not to appeal an 11th Circuit decision that would have taken the case back to the Supreme Court in a state statute that had required all parents of school children to register in a census to determine their immigration status. So that while 30 years is a long time for a clear public policy to have been implemented, it's not always adhered to, it's not always understood, and many parents do not fully apprehend the protections that it affords their children. All of that said, knowing that it's there, knowing that it's the law of the land, and that it's never been changed and has only been solidified. In fact, a number of states have incorporated its provisions into their own state law. This is an event that we should celebrate. 31 years of a good policy is worth noting, and it, of course, has led to all of these children growing up to go to college. So when Plyler or when Doe go to college, that's also to be celebrated, even though the case didn't really address that particular issue. Well, comprehensive immigration reform is a very substantial idea where both God and the devil reside in the details. And there's lots of moving parts to it, and lots of lines to be drawn, and lots of implementation issues to be decided upon. And so while the early versions of comprehensive immigration reform, especially those being proposed by President Obama and the administration, are very promising and very generous, there are still some lurking time bombs. For example, how long will people have to have been in the United States in order to be eligible? Back in 1986, it was 5 years. Will this be longer or will this be shorter? Where we draw that line will make a difference. Will these people have to leave the country and re-enter? Many people, including the restrictionists and the conservatives, have said, well, they've got to get in line. Well, as former Governor Bush of Florida wrote recently, there is no such thing as a line. Everybody is in a different line. There's no single line, and that's one of the big myths, in fact, one of the big lies. Right now, it could take 18 years for someone to bring a Filipino brother here because of restrictions on countries that restrict admissions to 25,000. And so you build up these big queues in countries like Mexico, Dominican Republic, the Philippines, China, and India. I think that comprehensive immigration reform will need to take care of those. We'll need to be generous in the kind of provisions necessary. I think it will need to take all of these DACA kids, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and put them at the front of the line because they've already been pre-screened. They already speak English. They've already been cleared of criminal behavior. They have all the biometrics on them, including eyes and pictures of their eyes and fingerprints and the like. And those kids ought to be up front, which would be a very good thing because there's going to be about 500,000 of them when the dust settles on the DACA program. It's been very good that everybody appears to think that we need comprehensive immigration reform. We haven't been this long without it. The last major positive accommodationist reform was 1986, followed 10 years later by cutbacks and restrictionist reforms. And so reform itself is a loaded word. What I'm looking for is comprehensive immigration reform that allows us to clean up some of the problems, particularly these per-country problems, cut down on the queues, make it easier for people to come and to stay. And right now we have too much enforcement and not enough legalization. Well, that's the particular question and concern that drives me and my colleagues, because we have many of these kids already in our schools due to Plyler, and thanks to Plyler, we have a substantial number of these kids who have all of the strivings of successful immigrant families without the opportunity to remain in the United States permanently. And so they lead these shadowed, furtive lives where they're constantly at risk of exposure and deportation. We've been deporting 400,000 people a year for the last several years, including tens of thousands of U.S. citizen children who will be able to represent themselves and show up again when they're 18. But in the meantime, we've lost them, and they will never fully integrate into whatever the home country was. So this has been a good group of students to test the theory that the United States should be the receiver nation of the world, where everybody who is capable and ambitious wants to come here because they think that their abilities will be recognized and incorporated. And we are the fortunate beneficiaries of these immigration streams, because otherwise we would be an elderly population with no young people coming, and we would be like China and Italy and other countries that have substantial numbers of old people with very low birth rates. We are the fortunate beneficiary of a system and a lifestyle and an ideology that encourages these people to come from all over the world. And we are very fortunate to have them. And DACA and comprehensive immigration reform should further both of these, as Plyler has over the years. I'd like to encourage all of the DACA students to apply as early and as soon as possible if you have any chance at getting this. That is, if you don't have misdemeanors on your record and so forth. I've recently seen some Dreamer students on YouTube, and I've had discussions with them, very difficult discussions, because they think that this is intrusive and invasive, and they already feel like they're citizens. If they think that DACA is somehow too invasive, wait until they see comprehensive immigration reform, which is going to be much more searching and detailed and nuanced of them. Apply now. Get your family members who are eligible to apply. Be careful not to expose your parents to risk, and take advantage of this gift that is in the offing right now. It's available. It's only going to take longer. It's been taking about 6 weeks. It's going to get up to 6 months when the next 500,000 people apply. So far, almost 500,000 people have applied, most of them successfully, and they're in the final stages. This allows you to work, to remain in the United States, to leave and to come back legally. It stops the unlawful presence clock, and it also gives you a Social Security number opportunity. These are almost halfway to becoming a citizen. So we look forward to you becoming DACA, eventually becoming one of our citizens. And since we've invested in you, it's important that you now start investing back in your own community. Thank you for the efforts that have led to this, and there are many people who have been working on your behalf.